to see so many of you here today. So what on earth would possess any of you to think about a career in the food and drink industry? That's the question that I'm going to try and answer in a matter of minutes. The good news is, for all of you that are still at school and thinking about college choices, for those of you that are at college and thinking about career choices, there's almost nothing you will have chosen yet, and you'll have been asked to make choices for years. What subjects you want to do, what college courses you want to consider. There's almost nothing you will have chosen that would preclude you from a career in this sector. So for any of you out there who want to be a doctor, my strong advice would to do a medical degree, or else you're just going to hurt people. Food and drink, you could do almost anything. The breadth of jobs that are available in this sector is unbelievable, and you only have to walk around this hall to see some of them. So I'm going to present the case for working in this sector, what the opportunities might be, and how it might move over the next years. The level of change coming in this world, and in the world that I work in, and I do a job where I'm responsible for trying to work with many, many partners who are in this room and elsewhere, try and grow the value of our food and drink industry and grow its reputation. How could Scotland become famous for its food and drink industry? And the level of jobs that will be created over the next years is going to be mind-blowing. I'm going to walk you through a bit of that. So, this country you will recognise. This is known as the Miracle Shot, the only known photo of Scotland from space when there was no cloud cover, taken about 5 years ago. By way of show of hands, are any of you in any way either from, connected to, or know someone in farming, agriculture? Okay, a few of you. So you will know that we are mostly a food-producing nation. So when you strip away all the concrete across this country, all the towns and cities and roadways, and you get rid of all the rock that sits on the top of the mountains, is no use to anyone, you're left with 75% of Scotland's landmass, all of which is under agricultural production. If you wanted to land from outer space and find a country that food production that is at the heart of the country, then Scotland would be it. An incredible diversity from all this East Coast stuff. A third of Scotland's soft fruit, there's strawberry science going on over there. A third of all the soft fruit produced in the UK comes from just a wee part of Scotland in there. Seafood wise, we have one of the longest coastlines in Europe, about 12,000 kilometres. Only places like Greece and elsewhere will compete. Landing some of the most incredible seafood, about 60 different species of seafood will land just around that coastline. 2/3 of all the langoustine that the world harvests each year comes just in the west coast of Scotland. So for a wee place in the world, we have a huge potential food and drink footprint. And we have some star players that you will all have heard of, Scotch whisky being the number one. That is sold to every single country around the world. As your watch ticks or your clock ticks past, every single second of every single day, Scotland is selling 40 bottles of whisky out of Scotland around the world. So if I'm going to waffle at you for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so, that way another 30 to 40,000 bottles that are flown out of Scotland and gone to bars in New York and Shanghai and being sold in duty-free shops around the world. 18 million casks are aging at the moment of Scotch whisky. There's a warehouse on the west coast, on the west of Scotland, that houses many of those casks, which is reputed to have greater value under its roof than Fort Knox does of gold. So a huge, huge industry. Aquaculture industry, back at the far end of that room, just as you guys were coming in here, left-hand side is the Aquaculture Innovation Centre. Scotland is the third largest producer of farmed salmon. So if you went down to Heathrow and you spoke to the guy that runs Heathrow Airport, and you said, what is the biggest cargo category that goes out on planes? They've got a number of things. They will send foreign aid out of Heathrow, they will send medicines, they'll send books. The single biggest cargo they send out of Heathrow every year is Scottish salmon. If any of you have ever been out to the Middle East, there's a flight that goes twice daily from Glasgow out to Dubai and then on to the Far East. It will most likely, if you have been on that plane, underneath you, separate from all your luggage, you'll be pleased to know, but underneath you will be hundreds and hundreds of salmon and seafood going out there every single day. This morning, salmon will have been pulled out of waters on the west coast of Scotland and it will be getting served in a restaurant in Hong Kong tomorrow night. So this is a sector that's going global. So there's been shining stars in Scotland's food and drink industry for a while. And the sector's chunky now. So it's worth about 14 billion quid. That's just a long line of zeros, but to put in perspective, sales of oil and gas in Scotland last year were 13.3 billion. So this is Scotland's largest sector now. It's the fastest growing sector, as Jim says, best performing domestic sector, fastest growing export. And in Scotland, it's growing twice as quick as anywhere else in the UK. So something different is happening here. All this basically means we are going to need people. Jim mentioned 27,000 jobs we will have to fill just over the next 5 years. This may be one of the few industries that can guarantee someone who is young, enthusiastic, creative, innovative, entrepreneurial, a job over the next few years. And I suppose that's what today is all about. Part of our challenge, I suppose, is our world is really uncertain. Clearly Brexit is happening, and who knows how that is going to pan out. All I do know is at the moment that 40,000 people that work in this industry are EU nationals. And we're going to need them as well as all of you and everyone else to come into the industry. I know at the moment that 70% of all the food that we will sell out of Scotland this year will go into the European Union. But how that will pan out, nobody knows. We sell a lot to this guy's country. Frankly, what on earth he'll do in terms of trade policy is largely out of our control. All we know is we've got a nation of quality food, quality drink, in a world that increasingly wants it. So what can we control? What kind of industry do we want to be? And that's where we're thinking hard. So we wrote a plan to try and grow the sector 10 years ago. We talked about growth, profit, numbers. We want billions of pounds here, billions of pounds there. The reality is this sector, perhaps uniquely, maybe alongside tourism, has more potential to do good for Scotland PLC than any other. We're producing healthy food, and Scotland has a real dietary health problem. About every single 5 to 7 years in Scotland at the moment, the average waistline in Scotland is increasing by 1 inch. We have a relationship with food in this country, strangely, for a country that produces probably the most naturally healthy products in the world, a real challenge with dietary health. But we've got huge potential to make an impact there. And Scotland looks pretty nice. And why does that look nice? Because there's a farmer there, and he or she is managing that 24/7. 75% of that land mass is being managed by farmers, our coastlines by fishermen. So if you're interested in environment and sustainability and how we continue to drive economic growth but have a positive impact in the world at the same time, food and drink is a place to look at. And it's also about integrity. How do we invest in our people, ensure product quality, food safety, all that sits as part of our industry. We will be successful in food and drink if we make money. No doubt about it, we want to make money. But there's an opportunity to make a serious contribution to the future of Scotland and the UK. So how do we stand out? Scotland has a national identity for food and drink. We didn't used to have one. Down south they don't have one. They have lots of regional identities. They'll have Yorkshire, they'll have Lancashire, Norfolk and Cornwall. The one thing Scotland has is a growing national identity. And that is creating an umbrella under which companies can flourish. So down there is Mara seaweed. So salt is the past, seaweed is the future. Might sound slightly manic, but in future you'll be sprinkling seaweed on your chips rather than salt. Why? Because someone's shaking their head saying, no, it's going to happen, it will happen, I promise you. Why? Because that is a superfood. The nutritional power of that product is unbelievable. The problem is most of us don't know that. And at the moment the thought of sprinkling seaweed on my chips seems crazy. But it's going to happen, it's going to replace salt, it's going to, and we could be at the forefront of that. That could be £1 billion industry over the next few years in Scotland if we put the right investment in. So what we now have is a footprint in the world, where the world recognises that Scotland stands for quality. So where are we going to sell? Where are we going to go? A lot of this will be about making a success within Scotland. So tourism, this year, 15 million people will come to visit Scotland. They'll choose Scotland as a destination. There are a few things we know they're going to do. Guaranteed they're going to do. So Visit Scotland, the marketing agency for tourism, goes and surveys tourists all the time. How many are going to visit a golf course? How many are going to visit a castle? How many are going to go canyoning? How many are going to go down the Royal Mile, visit a fringe show? There are only 2 things we know they're going to do for certain. They're going to have to sleep somewhere, and they're going to eat and drink. And they're probably going to do it 3 times a day, and they're going to spend 80 million nights in Scotland. And a phenomenal opportunity to get tourists to embrace our food and drink world. We need to get more businesses working across the UK, and this is where the interesting stuff starting to happen now, internationally. How can we take products from wee old Scotland and send them around the world, whether it's in the belly of that Emirates flight going out of Dubai, or whether it's whiskey being shipped around the world. We now have people, and this could be you guys in future, people based in Shanghai, in Singapore, in Toronto, in Boston. At the moment, as we sit here, there's a huge showcase going on Scottish products in a supermarket chain in Beverly Hills, being run by our man here, JC, working overseas to find opportunities in the food and drink sector. This is a show we were in Hong Kong. It's huge interest in the products that we've got. I keep pointing around the room, but at the back of the room is the Confucius Institute, which is building links between Scotland and Japan, education links. This year we'll send probably 60 million quid's worth of whiskey out there and near on 100 million pounds worth of food. A huge amount of trade that's happening, and that is a minuscule proportion of that Chinese market. China, as we all know, is growing for fun. There are now 45 cities in China that have a population greater than Scotland. A huge opportunity in markets out there. So if you're interested in languages, in culture, we need you working in food and drink as we go forward. But the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. Now, by way of show of hands, who recognises that logo? It is
Airbnb.
Airbnb, spot on. 10 years ago, 3 guys were in their apartment in San Francisco. Hardly any apartment. You went to San Francisco, it was a nightmare to try and find anywhere to stay. Hardly any accommodation at all. These guys were in their apartment and thought, do you know what, we're going to let out the apartment. We'll chuck a few croissants, a bit of cereal on the table, we'll give them breakfast. They blew up some airbeds and Airbnb was created. There are now 1 million rooms on that site. It's the biggest provider of accommodation anywhere in the world, and they don't own a single room. Don't own a single one of them. It's just a platform. Uber, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, didn't exist. Today, and every day this year, 1 million taxi rides will be taken through Uber. The biggest taxi firm in the world, and they don't own a single taxi. It's just a platform, transforming how that travel and tourism sector is working. The iPhone and the iPhone, is it iPhone X is the next one that's coming out, or iPhone 8? I'm kind of lost where we are. 10 years ago, in fact, not quite, a little bit more, at the back end of 2016, rumours were circulating that Apple were going to try and transform their iPod, which was pretty successful, into a phone. And analysts told them to forget it. Any company that strays too far from their core market will die. Well, 1 billion of these things have now been sold, and 10 years ago they didn't even exist. So the pace of change is unbelievable. And to demonstrate that, I suppose in a short amount of time, and I suppose if you guys are, well, what were we in? We're in 2017, so you probably started, for those of you in 5th year, 6th year now, you started your education, high school education, 2011 maybe, primary school, 2004, 2005, somewhere in that midst. This is 2007, and this is the Pope's inauguration at the Vatican. You might wonder why the hell I'm showing you that. In 2007, there was a guy from the future here, filming proceedings with his mobile phone. Well, only 6 years later, we got another Pope, because this guy got ill health, stepped down, and Pope Benedict, or whoever on just now, came in. 6 years later, a photo from the same place, of the same ceremony, looked like that. In only 6 years. So there's a lifetime of change happening in our sector, but things are moving at such pace that unless we get people who are innovative and creative and young, who can embrace this technology, we're busy putting in faster computers into all our businesses. Unless we get faster, smarter people, we're going to be struggling. So what does all that mean for food and drink? So our friend here, this is him doing his shopping. He's in Seoul in South Korea. And this is a subway system. So Tesco, still the biggest supermarket in the UK, about 3 in every 10 quid that we spend on groceries will go through Tesco's tills. They went into South Korea. Seoul is a nightmare for trying to open shops because there's so little real estate, and the real estate there is incredibly, incredibly pricey. So what these guys worked out was that Seoul also has the busiest underground network of any city in the world. 10 million people will be on that subway every single day of every single year. So they put the shops in the subway. So those are the doors opening, and that's our guy here, commuter, going on. And this guy's doing his shopping before he gets on. So he'll just ping the, this is about 5 years old, this photo, ping that QR code, that product will go into his basket and it'll get delivered at night. Now, I don't know if the bus stops of Hawick and Gala and Edinburgh are going to have stores like that. And before we get on the number 26, we're going to be doing our shopping. But suffice to say, that's a big change for us. So we've got companies that sell products in 3D at the moment. So if you want to buy a steak, and QMS or another one that are up there, you pick it up, you feel it, you have a look at it, you see if you like it. We've got to sell those products in 2D now. And when you click on that QR code, how do we start telling a story behind the products as well? We are not going to sell food and drink on price in Scotland. If you want cheap food, go get it somewhere else. There'll be a big country that will produce to lower standards and they'll do mass volume very well. We're going to be at the premium end. We don't want to be selling, we're not interested in selling salmon to low discount supermarkets in China. We want to sell to the highest premium hotels. It means we've got to tell a story. If you wanted to do your Tesco shop just now, you'll probably get it delivered in 24 hours. They haven't cracked convenience. Shortly, you'll be able to do your Tesco order here, and on your bus on the way home, you'll see the drone flying overhead about to deliver it to you. And we need to think about supply chains that will react to that. We're going to change how we grow food. This has plans for vertical farms in Singapore Harbour. One thing we are running short of in the world is land. Don't have enough of it. Climate change is getting short of what we've got just now. We've got a limited amount of land, so instead of growing out the way on land, we're going to start growing up the way. We're going to be turning salt water into fresh water, funneling up there and producing products in a very different way. I don't know if any of you have been to New York. That's the Chrysler building there. That's a mock-up of a 280-storey vertical farm on the Hudson River. Might never happen. Probably won't happen in New York. But those are the kind of developments that are happening in the sector. We're starting to farm seafood miles out to sea. This is a Norwegian plant that's trying to do that. Which again, turning salt water into fresh water, taking farms off the land and taking it out to the water. And we're apparently going to be growing meat in laboratories in future. Not for me. From lab to fork doesn't really feel like the right marketing message for me. But as the world goes down this way, there might be room for a small country to go back to basics and do things the way we've always done it. Tons of innovation happening. If you're a dairy farmer at the moment, you're likely to get a text from one of your cows during the day. It will tell you it's gone in for milking, or it will tell you it's not gone in for milking, and the vet needs to go and check it. So a huge amount of innovation happening. You can click on products and find the carbon footprint. We need to understand the carbon footprint of every single one of our products, because people buying them in future will want to know it. So change is coming. How do we know that? Because it always comes. The only constant in life is change. Some of you will have seen many of these photos before. This is the main drag in Dubai, 1991. Was about 20 years later, a picture for the same place looks like that. Shanghai, and a lot of product going into Shanghai. This bit here was all marshland, particularly this bit, all marshland, not much happening. 20 years later, it looks like that. And we've got products, we've got cheeses going into these hotels. We've got seafood going into these hotels. Rapid growth. A population the size of roughly Crieff every single week is moving from rural China into Shanghai. So huge demand as we go forward. Mobile technology, as I've mentioned, is taking off. Don't worry about the dullness of this slide. The only thing to tell you about this is that the other half of the world is going mobile. The developing world going mobile, cashless societies, and we're going to have to adapt to all of that. So to finish off, Jim, what are we going to have to do? Clearly as a sector we need to invest in people and skills, and the breadth of jobs that are out there are unbelievable. And again, look at the FDS and we need scientists, nutritionists, we need Mandarin translators, we need people that have butchery skills. The chefs are doing a lot of work over there. We have a massive chefs shortage in Scotland. We have about 3 years to get that fixed, or hotels are going to be in serious bother. So a huge breadth of jobs, and ultimately our view is that this industry will double in size over the next 15 to 20 years. Huge potential for you all to be part of that story. And as I say, no matter what choices you have made to date in school subjects, college courses, none of it will preclude you for a career in the food and drink industry. And spend time with some of the guys there and you'll get a sense of the breadth that is available. We need new people in our sector. Why? Because we need new thinking. Why do we need new thinking? Because the world never moved anywhere without new thinking. And we need that badly. So I'm going to end. I'm going to stop now. You'll be no doubt relieved to know. And in some ways you might say, well, that's all very interesting, but you're paid to tell a good story about food and drink. And this is true. I presented the case for. No one's giving you the case against. But I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute video a bit about what Scottish food and drink means at the moment and the quality we've got. And we've been rubbish at this in Scotland. We have been rubbish for years at realising the quality of food and drink we've got on our doorstep. We've laughed about being the deep fried Mars bar country. Well, actually, we've got a phenomenal larder. And I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute video, some faces you'll recognise, some well-known chefs trying to describe Scottish food and drink in 3 words. But thank you for listening.
That's quite a tough one.
What does Scottish food and drink mean to me? I may sound biased, but I'd probably say the best.
For me, Scottish food, the thing that really makes it special is the whole variety, the whole French term terroir. We have everything here in Scotland, from the rolling mountains to the cold, ice-cold seas.
It kind of means everything to me because it's my life. 28 years working as a chef and being in Scotland cooking with the finest produce.
The phrase Scottish food conjures up images of, you know, the finest beef, the finest sea fish.
The produce is just unbelievable and it's the envy of the world.
Scotland, for me, in terms of its food and drink, is like an uncut diamond. We know it's there, we can see it sparkling, but we haven't quite polished it up to that level that everybody can really see it.
I think Scottish food and drink is a treasure chest of goodies from around the whole island nation. You know, we've got an abundance of fresh fish, meats, dairy, you know, drinks. It's a treasure chest.
I think Scottish food and drink is fantastic. It absolutely epitomises quality, freshness and a unique sense of being.
When I think of Scottish food and drink, I think it's the highest Monroe to the lowest, you know, down to the west coast. It's great shellfish, great fish, great game. Just one of the best larders, if not the best larder in the world.
The food's there, it's there for the taking. You don't need to travel miles to buy it. It's on your doorstep.
Oh God, you put me on the spot. Seasonal, local, and passionate.
Fresh, progressive and tasty.
Quality, definitely. World-beating quality.
I think it's expression of life.
Accessible. It's affordable at all levels.
The best. That's 2, isn't it? Best.
I think in 3 words, Scottish food and drink for me is on my doorstep.
Fresh.
My 3 words would be that Scottish food and drink is right up there. That's 3 words, isn't it? Right up there, yes.
And taste.
Quality,
Seasonal,
freshness,
sustainable,
a uniqueness that nobody in the world has.
Scottish.